Okay. Peace to everybody. Peace to all the viewers. So we're going to start. We're going to actually be going through all this, right? So actually, let's just start here. So when some people hear Meru, they think of these type of pictures, right? The modern day person may think of these type of pictures, okay, in which these represents a Hindu text, right? A Hindu practice. But what I like to talk about is how Moors basically are not only all over the world, but how this relates to every religion, every practice, and why we chose. These are some of the reasons why we chose to name our state government Meru, or our country Meru, right? The people decide that. People are different from persons, right? The elected ones, the ones who chose themselves to be nationals or officials, right? So, um, just to actually start off with this website, which is a pretty good website. Again, it says Moorish American Muslim, but as we know, Moorish American is not the true term to call us. It's strictly Moors or Moroccans, right? Um, Moorish American is a derogatory term. So we're not going to read everything here, but this website sheds a lot of good light. This brother, Sheikh Wayel, shed a lot of good light, a lot of good references, in which I'll find here shortly. And we'll start right here. It says, the sacred mount, whose earliest appellation appears to be Meru, also appears to be the source of many mythos, dating back thousands of years. It is here we will start to put the pieces of the perplexing puzzle together and make connections that probably have never been made in manner that this chapter and in this book in general will undertake. Prophet Noble Drew Ali in a informs us in the Americanized Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, chapter 47, in that part, in which that's totally twisted and Americanized. Well, anyways, we know this is Morocco, right? So it says, the inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. That's the reason why he got these highlighted, these in more bold text. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit the northwest Africa, uh, they were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire. With their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes, their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa, across Great Atlantis, even to the present North, South, and Central America, which is really North, South, and Central Morocco, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so this just says like as a reference, not necessarily directly to Meru, but this is giving differentiation from Asia, in the Holy Lands, right? In Africa, talking about Canaan, Cush, right? With the whole Ham story, right? Ham is everything but the Negroes and everything like that. So this is just kind of giving a build up Um, and in another book, as we see, starting off right here, or excuse me, right here, he says the name of this book is called, in part, Harmol, or the Mountain of the Assembly, written in 1891 by Orlando Dana Miller and Stephen Munsey Whipple. They observe, and we also, so keep in mind, we're going to talk about all these aspects of Islam, the Hindu texts, all of that, right? So it goes to say, note the great Hamite Cushite race from the east was the first to settle in Egypt and Babylon. That this Bible race can be traced to the Mount Meru on the high table lands of Central Asia. That the races immigrating from the region can be traced from thence to the four quarters of the earth, and that however widely separated, they can be retraced from their common home, the Eden of Genesis. So in this book from 1891, they're talking about the people of Hamite, the Hamite and Cushites, right? Africa came from this Mount Meru, aka the more ancient lands. This first Egypt, which is this land, the Moroccan Empire, right? So-called America. So this is a book in 1891, right? Where they're denoting Central Asia. Now keep in mind, there's several Merus throughout this landmass. You got one in India. You have uh, several, right? North Pole, so-called, and which we'll get into. But let's keep using a few references. It says that okay, you can clearly see the similarities in the information that Prophet Noble Ali gave us in the research from the aforementioned source and how they match up in regards to the Moors of Cushite and Hamite origins, coming forth from the east and inhabiting what we know as Africa. What is unique about the latter is, however, is that the that those that those researchers cite Mount Meru as the source of these. Our great ancestors who came from the central location and then inhabited the rest of the world. How was the conclusion derived? We will not render speculation for those researchers, however, their works are also centered in the mythical mountain, and so their works are critical in this regard. Several 18th, 19th, and early 20th century works claim that Mount Ararat, or the mountains of Ararat, of the biblical fame in Genesis 8:4, is comparable to an earthly myth pertaining to the sacred Mount Meru and related to the Garden of Eden, right? In the biblical narrative, Noah's Ark comes from Mount Ararat, etc., etc. Starting from right here, Drusilla Dungy Houston, in her works in 1891, wrote uh, in some book, okay, but wrote that in those primitive days, the central seat of Ethiopia was not the Meroe of our day, which is very ancient, but the kingdom which preceded it by many ages. So what people think is the homeland, the motherland, right? Meru is not, which is Africa is not the homeland, right? It's here. So it says that was called Meru. Lenormand spoke that the first men of the ancient world as men of Meru. Sanskrit writers called Indra, similar to Idra or Idris or Thoth, right? Chief god of Hindu, king of Meru. He was deified and became the chief representative of supreme being. Thus, a primitive India settled by colonists from Ethiopia, right? Jews, well, We're not. It's not necessarily Jews as the colonists. But anyway, I'm gonna stay away from that word. Right? Last time I said something, I got my stuff taken down. So we're gonna be careful how we saying it until some laws is enforced, right? So it says, thus was primitive India settled by colonists from Ethiopia. Early writers said there was very little difference in the color or features of the people of the two countries. So we're basically talking about, as it says, sovereign of Meru, right? The lost literature of Asia Minor dealt with the extension of Ethiopian domain. Okay, and I'm picking apart from the sentences. So obviously we're talking about so far Meru being in reference to Asia, but according to the knowledge that we already know beforehand, before even starting this video, right? We call ourselves Asiatics, and many of us know that ancient, what we call so-called ancient Egypt, was actually in this landmass, right? Which we'll get to pictures and etc. It says this is the highlighted. Um, okay, this is highlighted in William F. Warren's 1855 works, where he states, "Now, just as Christians love to localize in their own midst their holy places, so their early nations of the world love to create miniature reproductions of Eden. This was eminently true of the sacred architecture of the Babylons, Egyptian, Hebrews, and Chinese. Copian assures us that every orthodoxly constructed Buddhist temple either is or contains a symbolic representation of the divine regions of Meru." Okay, so even the Buddhists rock with this, right? "In the heaven of the gods, saints, and the Buddhas rising above it." And I'm gonna cut this. We're gonna go back and forth from text because we're gonna go into the spiritual aspects as well. Okay, and how this relates to Moors more directly. In the Mount Meroes, we have only in the Greek form of Meru, a long ago shown by Creuseur. The one is the navel of the earth, for the same reason the other is. Egyptian Meru or Meroe is the Egyptian text Mer, in Assyrian Maruk or Maruka, right? So Mer, Maruk, Maruka, Meroe is all the same thing, right? So we can take a look at Mer on Egyptian text, the hieroglyphs, right? When you're talking about Meru, right? So let's take a break from this website and just go to a few Egyptian texts. Thanks to this book, right? Good brother Cosmo L. We see murder more, right? So we're talking about, a whole discussion. Some people might say mur or MUUR is different from MOOR, in which they're really just talking about a time period, a, a transition of things to where things changed. So this doesn't make anybody different, right? More means melanated people. That's everybody throughout the world, right? At the same time, we have a treaty of peace and friendship that says Moors and Americans, two different jurisdictions, right? Two different governments. So if the Americans are not Moors and Moors are not Americans, well, in international law, though they're melanated people, right, we have to know how to differentiate higher self from lower self and conjoin the two at the same time, right? So we can't take all our spiritual concepts, talk about Morocco means America and Al Morocco, and it's nowhere in the treaty that Al Marikanos means Morocco, And when it's kind of Amal Americanos Estados, which means American states, and some people say that means Morocco. It's like, well, we can't just be bringing anything, any type of analogy to the table trying to prove points, right? So in international law, you got to deal with in international law the actual binding terminology words, nothing added, right? But also we got to understand, just as in Article 6 of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, that there are such things as Moors that are not under jurisdiction of the Sultan. What does that mean? Well, there are Moors in other jurisdictions or Moors throughout the world, right? But if your political status is not matching with your blood, then somehow you became out of whack, right? So let's continue with these pictures from this book. We can see that myrrh right here, right, means Moorish tree. Moorish tree. You all can also see that myrrh to the right, myrti, means the dead or the damned. Why does it mean the dead or the damned? Because myrrh or Moor also is a reference to the body, the physical body, in which they say, in a lot of mythos, it trapped us, right? So that's what it means by the dead, just to clear that up. And not to say that your body is, the damn, like it's a curse, but it's two sides to everything. You should love yourself, right? So it also says myrrh means die, death, right? Myrrh also means to guide. Um, Myrti, two halves of heaven. So basically, myrrh, more is everything. Okay, it's the spirit in the body. It's the actual body. It's the political status. It's everything. It's nationality, right? We have Mari, defeated Libyan king, right? And I'm just throwing things out there. Mar, to clothe, to dress, aka the physical body, right? To band, to tie, aka more means to anchor a ship, right? So you're talking about your physical body, mastering your I self law and master, right? Mastering your physical body, mastering your Merkaba, the spaces of your every part of you, spaces of your soul, the spaces of your spirit, the spaces of your body, right? Being conscious, knowing the timing, mastering, right? Knowing how to function in high property and high faculties. Um, and these are other, it says myrrh is to love, desire, to our wish, okay? So, and shout out to the brother Wally Scott Bay, that's his Twitter name at least, um, who I got a lot of these pictures that's coming up from here soon. But just a few other pictures. Mar means priest of Anu, high priest of Anu, right? And again, we have Mer with the right there with the owl by it, which is the name of Egypt. Egypt was really they called so-called America, which is really Morocco, the Moroccan Empire. They call there's several spots where Egypt is known, in which some of us may have heard the seven cities of gold, right? Um, and things of that nature, in which all of these points were high energy points, were high traffic points, you know, very very important places, beautiful places, in which we could see on some maps Egypt is, here in Tennessee, then it's over here in Colorado, or excuse me, over here in Illinois, then it's over there in, you know, such and such, South America, right? All these are just so-called the seven cities of gold, in which they're truly talking about the whole continent being eaten, truthfully. But it's just certain people try to pick it apart, because when we talk about, and we gonna talk about Tartaria and all that stuff too. Because when we talk about Tartaria and it being a one, everybody on one, in one connection, one frequency, one in agreement, in harmony. Everything, everybody's Moors. Tartaria, those are Moors. Everybody's on the same frequency, but things happen. Distortion happen, ego happen, right? So just a few other pictures. Tamaru, which some people like to say, this land was Tamarik or Tamaru. So this is America, right? But we also have to keep in mind that there's a difference from social usage of words and the actual proper concept, right? That's one reason why colonists knew to use the term America on top of the term states, because they knew they weren't going to be a de jure states. They knew the whole mind frame that people would be behind the term America. And if you look at more of the Arabic etymology in reference to the term America, and that's not the word in Arabic, but you'll understand more so the relation to the meaning and the pronunciation of Morocco, and other words like Morocco. So right here also Tamara, land of Mida, right? Egypt, okay, and Mer, which means desert, plain, or mountain, Meru, right? Mountain, okay. So what is this mountain about? Again, I'm hopping from place to place. So we can talk about what is this mountain about, because before we talk about this document, we got to remember that when we talk about statehood, that's what this is all about, right? Statehood. When we talk about statehood, the word state itself in international law is a person. It's seen as a person. We already know how persons are seen as corporations, right? So it's not only seen as a person, but it's seen as an actual government, i.e., your three branches of government: state constitution, state seal, etc. Not only that, but its state is defined as your own territory, i.e., your own country or state, right? The name of France, the physical land of France, is France. The name of their government is French Republic. The name of their state is the same name as their country, because the state is the country, right? So, being that the Moroccan government failed, and I know I'm kind of going on a little tangent, but being that the Moroccan government failed, right, the government became dormant, and the United States corporation is acting like the United States of America, leaving nobody to truly govern this land, i.e., America is for sale, right? Ain't that what they say? America is for sale. It's up to the Moors to establish more state governments in that territory to claim this land, because Morocco has been for sale. Not lawfully, but ain't that what they say? So Um, State is a person. If you checked out my metaphysics of international law, we talking about this whole Jesus effect, right? The thing that allows you to use your Merkaba, right? This thing that connects you to Earth and the rest of everything else on a physical and spiritual level. So Meru is known as a mountain, but people go back and forth if it's a physical or it's a spiritual thing. State is a physical and a spiritual thing. Divine and national movement, right? State means your state of mind, your spirit, right? We're talking about spirituality, we're talking about religious, right? Even though it's a difference between that, you can argue, but you get the drift. It's divine, right? Your soul, your spirit. National is to be a Moorish national. A Moorish national can only be a national of a Moorish government. We can't be a Moorish national of the United States of America government. Can't be a Moorish national of the United States government. It's a corporation. They have U.S. nationals. They have American nationals. You can't be a Moorish national or Moroccan national in the United States of America government. They have American nationals, U.S. nationals, right? So we got to make it make sense. For Moorish nationals, that means we're nationals of a Moorish government, an independent and sovereign state government, right? So this Mount Meru is the same concept as divine national, because we get into, is it physical or is it spiritual, which we'll get into here shortly. Thanks to the symbolism of Mount Meru, Chicago Journal. You can find this on JSTOR.org, right? The University of Chicago Press, etc., etc. Yeah, I'm only going to read the highlighted points mainly. But it says, it's talking about Mount Meru, whose 7 tiers represented 7 heavenly spheres in the 7 stages by which the human personality is enmeshed in the world of matter, and its top is the door of God, right? So imagine this. Okay, 7 stages, 7 chakras, right? This Meru is starting to sound like a person, right? Is in a state of person in international law. It's a person, like your spirit bodies, right? Your ancestors, these persons, right? This person in international law, this state is an entity. This entity is you. You are Meru. You are Moor. You are the Moor, right? You are the state. The people make the state. Part and parcel, right? So it says the human personality is enmeshed in world matters. We talk about higher self, lower self. You coming into creation, right? And it says Meru rose up in the 3rd dimension. In doing so, it pierced the heavens. In piercing the heavens, it transcended time as well as space. In transcending time, it became, in mood sense, and we're talking about Lemuria, right? A magical tool for the rapture of plane. Then it says, Meru is not, we must recognize, a place out there, so to speak. It is in here. What are they talking about? If it's not out there, so to speak, it's in here. They're talking about your spirit, right? More means to anchor the ship. More means spirit, right? More, swimming, spiriting. Spirit is doing what it does, right? So Meru, excuse me, is not only mentioned in the hieroglyphs, right? Known as Egypt, known as Moor, but it's mentioned in Hindu texts as pretty much everything. Because they say not only is it out there, not only is it your physical body, right? Out there, not only is this physical thing, this mountain, right? Even if it is a physical thing, right? But it's in here, as within, so without, as above, so below, right? It says Meru is reflected by circum circumambulation, circumambulation, ritual of pradasana, which defines or creates a sacred space and thereby makes possible the ascent or projection from the plane of mundane life to that of the sacred. So we're talking about this great tree, as they call it, or mountain, that's so high that it's piercing heaven. Talking about the spine, you choosing yourself, upright, elections, right? Vote, all of that. Um, it says to approach Meru is to change one's spiritual your spiritual state. To arrive at the top is to transcend particularities of state altogether. So some of us may be familiar with, once you become of a new consciousness, you change your name, aka appellation, right? That happens many times in the Bible. They come of a new status or a new state of mind, they change their name. They shed who they once were. Um, so the other highlighted point it says Meru could be built into it showed Meru could be built into it shows that the central mountain is not just a physical entity out there as one ascends it and rise above it. It becomes an immaterial in here. Meru is a framework or coordinate system for outer space or inner space. For inner space. It is the same for time. It is a shaft that projects upward to the center of the heavens, and the movements of the heavenly bodies, which calibrate the passage of time, are plotted around it. Okay. It says Mount Madra, the eastern part of Meru, for birth, the eastern part of Meru, right? Meru is the so-called mountain, and it has four um, directions, if you will, four rivers. These four rivers are said to be so strong that you can't, um, basically it's a one-way trip. Okay, and so, and I'll make another video with the book called Inventio Fortunata, where it explains the letters between Mercator and John Dee, because they went up and explored that area, right? So I'll make another video for that, but um, it goes to say so Mount Madra, the eastern part of Meru, because the western part they say was uninhabitable. Okay, um, which is funny because when you talk about Meru, just this Morocco, right? What was the United States? They was on the east side, right? The 13 colonies, right? Till they unlawfully took stuff over, and now they all of a sudden became known as the whole landmass, right? So we talk about this is America. We talk about what, like, how they was originally on the east side, and the west side was not inhabitable for the niggas. Excuse my language, but it's like that. So it goes to say Mount Mandara, it was used by the gods as the churning stick to create the world and its furniture out of the ocean of milk. But especially in Southeast Asia, Meru often stood in for Mandara, and thereby Meru came to be assimilated to the Panmuma, or the lotus, which symbolically the root of creation. So Southeast Asia symbolically became the root of creation. And we're Southeast Asia. If we know that we're Asiatics, and we're talking about this whole Pangea so-called concept, when the whole world was one, right? I.e., the Tartarian age, coming out of the last frequency of that after the physicality already broke apart, right? We have it representing the lotus, and some people say South America is a representation of the root of the earth, the root of creation, right? So, in which when we look at the maps, we know that the maps are technically flipped upside down and stuff. You know, it's all switched. So, and not say all of them, but a lot of them, they use these different techniques. Um, so it goes to say, and that it drew up the elixir from the ocean of the milk, just as the lotus draws up water, right? So the lotus became a representation of Meru, right? Being the Meru is the creation, all this type of stuff. And I'm make another video, but about the so-called North Pole and why it's so special and all this type of stuff. But here it says, here is a form of Tibetan meditation. Before offering a sacrifice, the sacrificer is required to imagine that the trunk of the body is Mount Meru. His four major limbs are the four continents. His minor limbs are the subcontinents. His head are the Deva worlds. His eyes are the sun and the moon. And his five internal organs are the objects of wealth and enjoyment among their gods. As a god, Meru is sometimes personified. Now take this with a grain of salt. I'm not telling you to do this practice, right? But take this with a grain of salt. It says that Meru is sometimes personified. Isn't state personified? State is a person, right? It's sometimes personified. So it says, envision the trunk of the body, your body, as Mount Meru. The limbs, the four continents. What are the four continents? Let's hope I remember that picture. Four continents. Boom, Mount Meru. That's what it's talking about. The northeast, southwest. Four elements. That's what it's talking about. Right? So they say this reality is real, but this reality is not real. Right? The atom is 99.99% space. But you got a physical body, but it's just to say death or the spiritual realm is so much more grand and more realistic that this realm is not necessary. It makes this realm not seem as real. It makes this realm seem not shit because it's low vibrating, right? It's the physical realm. But the thing is that it's just like the statement, as I say all the time. You only as real as you can keep it with yourself. So if your body is not real to you, Meru ain't real to you. If it is real to you, then it's real to you. You know, one way to measure that shit out, go get hit by a car. You know, one way to measure statehood out, go use this person, how you're supposed to use it, right? According to the laws of nature, of spirit bodies. Okay. So it says Meru is the chief and the highest among 20 northern types of the foremost 32 types belonging to the southern school. So Meru is the chief and the highest. That's what we can get out of that, besides all that was said. Meru is the chief and the highest among the 20 northern types and the foremost, right? Statehood. It says Meru being both the ideal stupa, stupa, um, in the center of cosmic symmetry. So we're talking about higher self, lower self, perfect balance. God, right? Middle path, middle pillar. Jesus. What they say? Jesus take the way. Jesus is God. The same. They say, right? It's the whole concept, full thing around. The sphere that's here for you to be part and parcel to have your closer connection with God. Because what is nationality? Nationality means your navel, your naval connection to the earth, your origin to the earth, your origin of birth, right? So if nationality and navel has connection, then we're talking about nationality in itself relating to the physical and nationality relating to the quality of your character. What is character? What is a character? The actor, right? We're talking about actors, characters, attributes, traits, right? We're talking about the spirit body, characters, character, chakras. Look at the word itself. Character, your spirit bodies, your spiritual connections. So you're talking about nationality, dealing with your origin, the grounding, right? Then you're talking about the spiritual aspect, the divine and national side, right? Higher self, lower self. So nationality, in which we know state is really the proper term now, because that encompasses the nation or nationality. You know, it grew from nationality to nation state to now the state. And we can understand furthermore as we read, it says, it's obviously preeminent motif and mandala symbolism. The mandala, democrat, uh, Democrats, sacred space, Demarcats, sacred space, where the rupture of plane occurs. This space, says Jitushi, represents protection from the mysterious forces that menace the sacral purity of the spot, which threaten the physical integrity of him who performs the ceremony. It also implies by magical transposition the world itself, so that when the magician or mystic stands in the center, he identifies himself with the forces that govern the universe and collect their uh, thaumaturgical, thaumaturgical power within himself. I know I butchered that, but so let's talk about some of what this said. It says it represents protection from the mysterious forces. What does this mean? Treaty. The word treaty means covenant. The word covenant is found in the Bible, which refers to a promise from God. So a treaty is a promise from God. That's your protection. That's your protection from the spirit realm at the base level. We talking about Anybody who ever called themselves a magician, spiritual, whatever they call themselves doing, at that base level, to serve and uplift humanity instead of doing whatever services you're doing, tarot readings, whatever. This is the base level for life itself in general. Why? Because we all humans. And on this landmass, we've been subjugated of human rights. So working magic, right, to uplift a new realm. This is literally the introduction of a new world. There is no, it takes a certain amount of people to do a certain amount of candle magic or put altars up or whatever. Buddhist monks tried that out and they got ransacked. Those doors was closed. Time to be holistic, right? This is not the golden age. So it says that the forces of the menace sacral purity of the spot, or which threaten the physical integrity of which whom performs the ceremony. What is that? The policy and forces. United States better not threaten no physical integrity, right, of him who performs the ceremony. What is that? The Moors exercising their human rights, living life. Life is a ritual, the ceremony, right? You have rights, right? Rights of passage, right? You have human rights, right? Life is a initiation process in itself. There is no, you got to go find a, a medium besides the state is telling everybody else to respect you, protect you. I think I want to pay taxes to a government like that, right? Especially after all we've been through. So we won't go back. I think I'll gladly pay taxes. How can we pay taxes now? Well, by start off by paying attention, right? Pay attention to yourself. Build up this energy, that spark that's needed, right? You got to elect yourself before you decide to elect others in a government, right? Everybody got electricity in. So it goes to say it also implies a magical transposition, the world itself. Okay. So the forces that govern the universe and collects their, I don't even know why I even went to that word again, but govern the universe, right? Government, statehood. Okay. And we almost done here with these this book. We'll get into a few pictures. It says Meru represented as a lotus. In the inner circle are deities of the stars, sun, moon, and the planets. In the middle of the circle are the 12 houses of the zodiac. And in the outer circle are the 28 mansions, aka nakshatras. In Tantra, of course, the term Meru came to the special sense of the worshippers, mystically conceived spine, a channel of psychic energies. The Meru is the median canal running upward from the perineum to the space above the head. So Meru, what is Meru? It's the name of our country. That's the name of our state. Okay, what is Meru? It's the medium canal running upward from the perineum to the space above the head. Right? It says the self of the worshiper is Meru. So who are you? You're Meru, the self, right? So it says, which is the world mountain and also the cosmic tree. Okay, so it's the spine, it's the cosmic tree, it's the world mountain. Mount Meru's nature that can never emerge from the contemplation of it merely as a point on a two-dimensional map, even a cosmic map. From the cosmic map represents for the cosmic map represents only space out there, even if the data of cosmography cosmography with its elephant-sized jambu fruits and circumambulating rivers are invincible to the fleshly eye. So are molecules and magnetic fields. Still, they are regarded to as concrete and physical in a very real sense. So Meru is not on a two-dimensional map, not even on a cosmic map, right? But it represents something out there, and the fruits are jumbo size, right? Remember how you may have read some books by historians saying that the trees, giant sized trees that they chop down, they produce, giant sized fruits, right? In which that this is in reference to this actual thing, right? You are actual thing. Fruits of your labor are even greater than the fruits of that tree produce. It says this is basically the rivers, the four rivers, right? And the fruits are invisible to the fleshly eye. So are the molecules and magnetic fields. So these rivers are magnetic fields. The fruits are molecules, right? Your electrons, atoms. That's the most internal parts of the fruits. It's the spiritual alchemy in it all, right? It's imagine just let's just tap into some occult science right quick for a hot second, right? Imagine you having a rough life. You was going gang banging, right? Shooting, whatever. And let's just chop it up into this analogy right quick. You was doing shooting one week. All the shooting, you was shooting at John Doe, right? Back and forth, you and John Doe was shooting at each other. Next week, i.e., next year, you came into knowing who you are, and you started statehood. Matter of fact, so much that you helped started a state government. And now John Doe came into knowing who he was. But just last week or last year, right? Y'all was shooting at each other. But what is nationality? What is nationality? We got to think about this. There's no excuses for nothing. Basically, we don't care about any idea you want to exercise as an official. Spirituality and nationality is the quality of your character. That means everything, all the ways that we've been going about it before, how you've been handling life, everything changes, right? Once you cannot deny somebody their human rights because your own personal whatever you got going on, especially as official. You have no rights to deny. No, this is free. All this is free. Your human rights are free, right? Start off by paying attention. That's what it'll cost you, and it'll cost you even more so because for us to even establish ourselves in the liberated way, it's going to take money to make money, right? People go to work to make a living. I'm sure everybody on this call has some type of income or some type of work ethic, right? That's the taxes. We form as one, this state, this person, this shield, this ally, right? Instead of putting it in the church, this is your church. Why? Because this is what's protecting you. This is what's not causing invasion. This is what's allowing you to do business throughout the world. This is what's et cetera, et cetera. Make sure your human rights is good, seen. Moving by ourselves ain't it, right? So it says, continue with the page. It says, kingship is another term which alternates with self or Perusa, cosmic tree, a world mountain as a symbol of ascent through higher planes to the timeless infinite. Let us first recall the graphic through fictitious Han Chinese explanation to the character of the King Wang. I'm not going to read all of that, but the next paragraph it says, like Meru, the ruler stands at the center of society. Everything is defined by reference to him. Around him, as around Meru, the rest of the world moves. He is immovable. The largely Buddhist idea of uh, Cakravartin, wheel turner, right? Wheel turner, i.e., the chakra. So it's a certain chakra that connects you. What is this? The Sudarshan chakra, right? And some of us may have heard Bobby Hemmett talk about, which what is nationality, connection with the earth, connection with the heart, right? So study the Sudarshan chakra if you don't know about that. But wheel turner. So we're talking about chakras, but this is a certain, remember, state is a person. It has its own chakras, i.e., your higher chakras, your spirit bodies, right? This is what you call Christ consciousness or global consciousness, or more so, or unified consciousness. When we tap into unified field in an organized fashion, but we start in the most disciplined ways. We've been so distorted that we are far from tapping into the high sciences and doing all the stuff we want to do, controlling the pyramids and stuff like that. We got to get the land, got to organize ourselves, right? So it goes to say, and I'm gonna stop for a question and answer here in a second. It goes to say the ideal world emperor, who by his karma sets in motion all laws by which the world is governed, echoes the theme. Like the king, the self of the aspirant to salvation stands poised between the physical world out there and the mystic inner space in here, where distinctions between subject and object are obliterated. Kingship, as Michael Houlin's recent study reminds us, is an important symbol of the self. The king, his palace, his central shrine, his capital city therefore belong to the same cycle equivalences of as does Meru. In a sense, the ruler is Meru. Therefore, it is fitting that a temple of Meru class, Meru of the Lord Prasadas, should be built. So it's talking about Meru. Remember, Meru is basically the state, the thing that's piercing the ground in the heavens. It's respected in all planes of existence. It's the thing that is it. If ancestors only see light, right? Demons only see light. They leech off of light. I made a video on the 50 skandha demon states, in which we went into that perspective, right? But we're also going to tap into more Islam's perspective here soon, Islamic perspectives. I'm just tapping into mainly the Hindu because that's where this Meru at. But we already know we're gonna tap into some the Islamic perspectives here in a second. Just know that. But so Meru basically, as it continues to say, is the center of the kingdom, right? And they say it's also fitting to be the temple. So everything is Meru, pretty much. So it goes to say the center of the kingdom, said Bosch, is equivalent to the Padmamula and to the cosmic tree. It is the place where Meru rises, and there should be four main roads radiating from it, the cardinal points, to materialize the cosmographic symmetry of Akbar. Well, I'm not going to read all of that. And the last point from this book goes to say the division of government and kingdom into categories numbering 4, 8, or 32 everywhere betokened a preoccupation where the magic of ritual orientation to the compass rather than with practical convenience. So it's talking about the division of government and the kingdom, i.e., separation of church and state. Right? Some people couldn't make sense of the divine and natural, trying to separate the two. State is both. So it's basically talking about Meru is both government and the kingdom. State is both government and kingdom. Right? So before we get into pictures, I'll open the floor up for any question and answer. Okay, no question and answer. No comments. So actually, let's go to this because we continue to read how it relates to Moors more so. Just a second, excuse me. Okay. It goes to say the prefix basically is Meru, Sumeru, right? What they call Sumeru, the mythical mountain of Sumeru, is Meru. Sumeru means excellent Meru or wonderful Meru. Okay. Sumeru is also Sumer or Sumeria, that whole concept, right? But we're not talking about Sumeria over there. We're talking about so-called Sumer or Sumeria. In this, there's an actual place called Sumeria in this landmass, in which they just tried to mimic everything on this landmass to everything in so-called Africa, that region. Excuse me. So it goes to say Sumer, right? It basically means, well, I'll just say is I'll start off right here. It says the Akkadian language gives us the word Sumeru, which forms our word Sumer today, which is said to be from the Sumerian, the older culture, who are called Kingir, uh, which is thought to mean land of the civilized kings or native land, or even land of the lords of brightness. Okay. So he goes to say uh, the very fact that the Hindu Puranas cite that the first men of the world as sovereigns of Meru, uh, according to Houston, and several early authors, and that the Sumerians are based on transliterations, thought to be lords and kings, and that in fact Meru is a mountain called Sumeru. Excellent or great Meru brings us to the most intriguing or correlations in this regard. Firstly, we must also point out that the word Berber is synonymous for Moor. It appears that the word Berber is connected to this sacred mountain as well. The Akkadians spoke what we call today a Semitic dialect, call the nose or summit of the mountain Berber. Okay. It is no coincidence that the word Moor in Arabic translates as Berberi. But but what appears more profound is what we seem to linguistically, at least, find in variation for his name for this name, Berber, associated with the mythical mountain. We will highlight this aspect in broad works of this chapter. We find that the Egyptian hieroglyphs, we already went over that, how MR means more, right? Mer, mountain. Mer means Meru, or Mer means mountain, as shown right here. Okay. So it goes to say, in an article published in 1819 in the Blackwoods Edinburgh Magazine, Volume 5, entitled Mr. Faber on the Pyramid of Cephrines, lately opened by Belzoni, on page 582 to 584, we cite, now the Brahmins are unanimous in declaring that every pyramid in the artificial mountain designedly constructed as a copy of the holy Mount Meru. Okay, so all these mounds, when we talk about the Brahmins, we're talking about Dravidians, we're talking about so-called people from South America or the Nagas, we're talking about people from so-called South Americans, we're talking about Moors from Morocco, right? So it says, and if you don't know exactly about that history, I advise y'all to, or encourage y'all to go to Curry Mayo Ahua, or however you say his channel. He breaks down a lot of historical books where it talks about people in so-called South America, which is really South Morocco, um, and how civilization branched off from down there, where everything started in the South, that type of thing. Um, and it's a lot of books and videos about that. Um, so check that out. But it says this holy mountain they describe as a special abode of Iswara, who during the universal deluge floated in the ship of Arga upon the surface of the ocean. The Hindu theologians, though occasionally differing as to the form which they ascribe to the holy Mount Meru, very generally represent as being a square and standing with the accurate relation of the four cardinal points of the compass, and composed of 8 successively diminishing towers placed upon the other. Such, according to Herodotus and Strabo, was the exact form and arrangement of the Tower of Babylon. But this very pyramid, raised at the banks of Euphrates, was, according to the Hindu theologians, the earliest montiform in the shape of a mountain edifice which the sons of men reared as studious copy of Mount Meru. It is now plain sight which each Egyptian pyramid, though every other pyramid like a copy of Mount Meru, okay, or Arat, was yet very truly, according to the theological speculations, declared by the priesthood to be the tomb of a very priest king of the country. Okay, so we're talking about then getting to Arabia, where uh, it says we will highlight the Moabite origins of the holy city of Mecca in chapter 8 and the direct connection between one of the other names of Mecca, that being Mesha, which is the name which is the name as the name of the ruler of Moab. In the fact that the said god of Mesha, who is Chemosh, was also venerated by the early Arabians as a black stone, and is possibly being in the same black stone that is the cornerstone of the Kaaba, right? So this is kind of just came to mind that we talk about black stone and stuff like that. It kind of remind me of what's his name? That guy, what's his name? He's always on Black Magic channel with Brother Rich. forgot his name. But he always talking about Larry Hoover, free Larry Hoover.
I think it's Rod Hayes.
Yeah, Rod Hayes.
Hmm.
It reminded me of that whole connection, the whole Blackstone and the whole Muslim, Moors, and that whole connection as being like, you know, taking it with a grain of salt. Not saying free Larry Hoover is the answer, obviously not. You can't go to the United Nations saying free Larry Hoover, expecting us to get our liberation. But um, to take that concept is to take it with a grain of salt, meaning that so-called free Larry Hoover is really to excite yourself. We have to get in the spirit of the confidence type of thing. The stand, this to be a stand-up person, right? Um, and thank you for saying Rod Hayes. I was struggling, but so it goes to say to continue. Godfrey Higgins, in his infamous book Anacal Anacalpis Anacalpsis, provides even more detail of the mythical mountain in its relation to the several ancient myths in this regards. He would say on page 354 of said book, Ilvrata, Il, Ilvrata or Arat, or Mount Meru of the Indians, was surrounded with seven belts of land, seven seas beyond them, by one much greater called the ocean. This was exactly the limitation of the earth and the seven planets on the top of Mount Meru called Mount of Saba, or the congregation of the heavenly host. You can look up these actual mountains in Morocco today, Mount Saba. Um, emblematical of the sun of seven planets in the Hindu side, called congregation, meaning the same of Sabbath, Lord of the Sabbath, Lord God of the Sabbath. It says, basically going down, it says, here is the origin of the Sabaeans, which which has been much sought for. Okay. So when you look up Mount Saba, right, in this landmass, here is the origin of the Sabaeans, right? The Hebrews, Hebrew stock. So in which we say it goes to say, let us examine some of the names above. Ivrata, either Rata, and Arat. Um, it says it is it that is related to the name El, who sits on the mountain as the chief god, chief of all gods in ancient times? Can it be that the ID or id of the Idravatta relates to the AD people of the ancient Arabia, who are the ancient people of the subject or wrath according to the Quran of Muhammad? Higgins in the above verse cites the Sabaeans as the people who descend from the ancient mount. Are not the most ancient peoples of Arabia also considered Sabaeans? We will go in depth, but we also got to remember what it says in the Holy Quran, Circle 7, right? As far as Moab and all the more from here being the true possessors of the Moroccan Empire, right? All this is the Moroccan Empire. How it got into the hands of the Sultan governing what goes on is another historical story, right? But we can nonetheless use these degrees to shed light first, because I'll make another video on that too. It goes to say, and we have just now seen that there was an Ilium in India, that in fact Meru was Ilium, right? Ilrata or the Indian Arat was often written Idravata. This is evidently Mount Ida, right? So Meru, Mount Ida, all this type of stuff is the same thing. This even relates to the Ida in Pingala, being that we have the feminine preceding the masculine, which we went into it. If you read into the or seen how we was going into the other slides in that book, you may have seen that the Kundalini was mentioned. So Meru relates to the Kundalini as well. It goes to say, I want to now bring you to the word Ilium or Ilium, cited above by Higgins. It bears a striking linguistic connection to the word Ilian of the Quran of Muhammad. The word Ilian only appears one time in the verse of the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran of Muhammad. It says, and what will explain to thee what Ilium is? Surah 83:19. It says, in it, we find that the Ilium relates to the supreme register, right? Supreme register, the connecting piece, right? Jesus say, if you want to get to God, you got to get through me. What is Jesus? Your breath. So everybody got Jesus. That's Shu, right? Yeshua. Shu is the breath. Yeshua is Jesus. Shu is the breath. Everybody got Jesus, right? What is the breath? It registers you into a higher dimension. It takes you there. It grasps what the mind has in store. Yet the mind takes you there. The breath, the mind sets the blueprint. The breath pushes you there. It builds your bodies. It's the middle, it's the bridge. The breath is the mind in action, right? So if you want to start off by, the mind is a very complicated thing. Start simple. Start with the breath, right? It's right there. You do it every day, right? Start simply using degree by degree at a time. One technique, and I know I'm getting off track. One breath technique, right? Two breath techniques, right? So it goes to say, on thrones of dignity, they will be able to see a view of all things. What does this mean? Wars on the pinnacle, just like Noble Dryly said. We deal with statehood, Meru, right? Not saying that you got to deal with Meru. If you're in this territory, yeah, but that's another story. So you can see it has relations to Elion, right? Now, more about the Moors, it says, now one may be asking because the name Meru is close in punctuation to the name Moor. Is there any form of corroborating evidence and or sources that can lead to at least? We already went through this. But it says, in a 1841 work titled History of the Moors in Spain by Florian, we find in the most interesting account in that, as noted previously in this work, speaks to this mythical and ambiguous origin of the Moors, that Godfrey Higgins with confidence concluded. It reads, the origin of the Moors or Mauritanians is like, hey dude, my son is up, so excuse me if I hear him. It says, is that of the ancient nations, obscure, in which the information was passed concerning the history, confusedly mingled with fables. The fact, however, appears to be established that the Asiatic immigrations were the earliest times made in Africa. And we're going to skip down to where it says, who conducted people called Sabia into Libya. And we're going to skip down to the other highlighted part. It said it informed its Sabians, basically, that the principal Moorish tribes pretend to trace their descent. This derivation of the name Moors is also supposed, in some degree, to confirm the impression that they came originally from Asia. And this is from a book, so he's just stating what it says in the book, just not international law. So remember that. It says the original Moors were Arabians, but we already know that the people who inhabited Africa were fathered by the people that came from here. So basically, we created that whole the African phenotype. Everything started from here. So, and I'm only saying that because just so there are no holes being left out as we read this. So the proof of some of what I'm saying is in other videos. I'm saying that so we get the holistic perspective. It says in Gerald Massey's book, right? A Book of the Beginnings, Volume 2, on page 590, it says, in the Egyptian, the Ru is the horizon as the door, gate, or mouth to the Mi, or Me, the abyss in the north. So the Me is the abyss in the north. The Ruru denotes the horizon as the place in the two lions, the double horizon of the equinoctial level. The Ru are steps. Meru, right? Meru would thus unite the abyss below and the horizon above. It is possible that Mount Meru, with its 7 steps, may be the type of this Meru. Though it is not our object at present, there is an ideograph of the two Egypts, the original of what is known as Greek wordle pattern, which reads Meri or Meru. It is the visible sign of the lower and upper, or Me, north abyss, and Ru, horizon and steps, right? So this goes in form of Anu, right? We talking about the on the horizon, right? On the hill. These are mounds, pyramids, right? The steps. It says, and it is feasible that the name Tameri is the land of Meru, whence Meru and the ancient Mers, or excuse me, Meroe, was once the capital of the Egypt under this name. Okay. You can read more about it, take screenshots or whatever, come back to it. But it says more about Meru and the different names it went by. It said the Mori or the Moors went the farther north into Spain or the Fan. It says the name of the Moors was found on the Egyptian monuments written as Mori. Okay, so for people who talk about Kemet, ancient Kemet, Moors affiliation. Right. So that's not important. We already went through those. It goes to say this then leaves us with Myrrh, right? That's not it. It goes to say, for this we bring you back to the book Harmod, where the authors are giving the reader 2 different breakdowns of the name Meropes, which is the self saying is Maruk or Meru or Mero. So it reads, Merops, the king of the island Cos, husband of the nymph Athema and the father of Emulus. His wife was killed by Diana because she had neglected to worship the goddess. Merops, in order to rejoin his wife, wished to make away with himself, but Juno changed into the eagle, whom she placed among the stars. The stars. Okay. It says, thus Merops is to be identified with the constellation of the eagle or Aquila. And if we talk about that, we're talking about a constellation that it's an energy that gives the outline of a dove over this complete landmass. Okay. It has everything to do with the age of Aquarius or this Aquila or this dove. It gives this outline of this landmass. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. And feel free to chime in at any time if y'all trying to. I ain't trying to take the mic the whole time. But it goes to say, um, it remains to show that the name Merops is only another word, another form of the word Meru. Okay, excuse me. So you can see as Maruk, Kush, right? That whole correlation. It says the name Kaz given to the island ruled by Merops can be no other than Kush, which the Kushite race were generally known. So if Merops was this landmass, right? It says the cause given the name cause given to the island ruled by Merops, right, can be no other than Kush, by which Kushite race was generally known. Merops is then only another name of the first man. Okay, the first man, first landmass, etc. Here, right? Then it's more proof again in 1912. Kush or Kush is written as Kus or Kos. It goes to say another source and several other early sources agree that this Kos is in fact Kush. The ancient fame of the prophet Noble Ali informs us that it was the Kushites who first inhabited Africa, and they came from the land of Canaan. Dungy Houston noted something profound in her great book as well. She stated, we know by the records that Memphis or Menon seized the whole coast of Arabia, Libya, and Ethiopia. In the Iranian stories, he had extended his conquest further to Bactrina. Amenphanis, Amenphanis, Amenphis subdued the Scythic nations in the Caucasus. And Scythic nations, let's finish this right quick. Subdued the Scythic nations in the Caucasus. He marched into Colchis, which was Ethiopia, and marched as far as the Don. These were but old Kushite dominions. So real quick, where it says Scythic nations in the Caucasus, right? We can't see it, and I bring up some other videos or maps, but where it says Scythic, right? Oceanus, Scythicvs. This whole region was the Scythians. So whenever you read on the Scythians, right, they're talking about this whole region right here, all of this. So the Caucasians, Caucasus, right? But we're talking about the original Caucasus, though, right? These were the old Kushite dominions, the old Kushite dominions. They gave that area up, right? It said, this land a little poor. Things change, right? So keep that in mind. Um, so let's see how far we got. Take a look real quick. Yeah, we ain't got too much further. So the name Caucasus or Caucasus extended from the Indian or the Mediterranean. So remember, Kas referred to Kush, Caucasus, right? Just the old Kushite dominions, right? So this is an interesting website to utilize some knowledge from, you know. So shout out to the brother. So we can get off that website and tap into real quick some maps before we get into some more readings. This is the name of this map, all of this, right? So we can zoom in and see what they they pictured Meru to be. So again, you have the Scythic, right? The Scythians, and here you have Greenland right here, Greenland. And then you have America right here. Okay, dang it. So look how close America is. California. That was named California, right? On the map accordingly. We can't take these maps as actual law because some of these maps is not. It wasn't accurate. So look how close Meru is. Look at the four rivers, right? So you have all that, and you have this is Asia, right? Look at this. It is connected to Meru. So Pangea, Asiatic, this portrays this connected to Meru, just as they say Australia was once connected to Antarctica, just as they say South America, so-called South America, South Morocco was connected to Antarctica, etc., etc. So you have that connection. When you talk about Mara, you talking about more, so more Scythians. Then you have Greenland, right? Donald Trump had a lot of land in Greenland to buy. Wonder what for. So you can use that map as a source. That's a good map to use. You can check this one out. Or this ain't it. So this is Antarctica, right? This is, if you ever heard of the flat Earth theory and all that type of stuff, we talk about all that. Worlds beyond the poles and all that, which I'm not about to get into now. But you can see the so-called South America is connected to Antarctica, right? Terra Australis, aka Antarctica, and Australia. Then you go to this side, you see the other half. Hey, keep doing that. Right? Terra Australis, Antarctica, all the same thing at that time. And then some of you may know we're not gonna spend too much time on this map, but the Monte Urbano map, which gives us this image, right? So this is, let's see, this right here is America, so-called, right? So we look at here, griffins. And sometimes you gotta refuse. I refuse to believe that Tartarian flags with griffins are just some made up things, and they just put some made up things on a flag and say, "Yep, this is us." Nothing real about it. You know what I mean? I just refuse to believe that that happens like that. Got different parallels, right? Oh, that's still killing me. Pretty much just going over, scanning the area. Right, we went over this map a few times. There's a lot of crazy stuff on this map. You know, you got the Crusaders. You got beings over here look like some type of Caucasians got left. So you got these type of beings, right? So interesting maps. But to end this video, or I'm gonna show y'all some of these last pictures. So and again, thanks to the brother Wiley Scott Bay. I believe that's his appellation. It goes to say, I got some of these pictures. I'm not sure what book they came from, but on his Twitter, he shares that information. It says the lotus, in which, remember, lotus is in regards to Meru, right? The lotus is the flower sacred to nature as her gods and represents the abstract and concrete universe, right? So divine and natural, the abstract, the mind, and the concrete, the actual, right? The physical. It says, as above, so below. Standing as the emblem of the productive powers of both spiritual and physical nature. It was held sacred from the remotest antiquity by the Hindus, the Egyptians, and the Buddhists after them, revered in China and Japan, and adopted Christian emblem by the Greek and Latin churches, who made of it a messenger of the Christians do now, who replaced it by with the water lily. So it goes to say it's identical to every nation. It says in the other picture, the lotus in India is the symbol for a prolific earth, and what is more of Mount Meru. Okay, so Mount Meru in this lotus earth means a symbol of prolific earth, i.e., uplifting humanity. Right. This book says ancient Indians, and we know that's a derogatory term because we're not Indian, right? But it says buried their dead, as did pre-dynastic Egyptians, uh, under round burial mounds shaped like the huts in common use. The stupa's round, the stupa's round, circular vault elevated this basic form into the image of the Mount Meru and the mythological peak that serves the center of the Indian cosmos, Meru called Sumeru. Okay. This one says the Cologne Online Sanskrit Dictionary says that Meru was the name of the fabulous mountain regarded as the Olympus of Hindu mythology. Okay. It says the place of meeting of the gods, affairs of men, spiritual, right? This one says the mountain has four faces, each one made of a different material. The northern face is made of gold, the eastern one made of crystal, the southern one made of lapis lazuli, and the western made of ruby. What is this talking about? In another video, I'll go in on uh you know I'm all about metaphysics and occult sciences, more sciences properly called. So we're talking about the firmament here, what they call the dome. Okay. Here it says Egyptians weren't Moors, but it goes to say Moratin, right? Short for Palmarat, Paul Moratin, excuse me, Paul Morapatan, something like that. It is a place where the Sun Temple located 3 kilometers to the south of the city of Akhenaten. Okay, it goes to say America America is popularly supposed to have received its name from the mariner, the name from the mariner, Americus Vespucius. Actually, et cetera, which is not necessarily true, but um, it goes to say the word Amarik signified great mountain, evoking Meru, the sacred mountain in the Hindu tradition, said to be the center of seven continents. Ancient America was linked with India through lost Lemuria. The early voyagers probably believed America to be the native word of the land itself, so they too would use it. So basically, America and Meru. This place was called Meru, which we talking about Al Marak, right? All these terminologies are, of course, not the same, and are, of course, closely related to American. But nonetheless, we know that according to international law, regardless of what all these books say, the treaty is between Moors, or i.e. Moroccans, and Americans, right? So don't let these books trick you, okay? This goes to say, Mer, right? It shows you connection. You can screenshot if you like, because I'm not about to read all this or nothing, right? Mer's place of ascension, MR, okay? You can also screenshot these. I'm not about to read these if you like, but okay. Modern name for Egypt, right? Ptah was linked to the sacred hill, okay? So when we talk about Ta Meri, when we talk about Ta, meaning the hidden, right? Meri meaning the body, the body, divine and national, right there, right? Mount Meru in America. Take a picture of that because I'm not reading that either. But these are just some screenshots of where you can find some of this information. Greeks called Meru. That's what they called America, Meru. Right? But then we also know that according to these documents, Morocco was the actual document taped to the actual terminology used for so long, regardless of what these books say. Right? Okay. It says the summit of the cosmic mountain is not only the highest point of Earth, it is also the Earth's navel and the point of which creation began. So what is this nationality? Earth's navel. Okay. So we're coming to a close. This is Mount Meru, which borders Tanzania and Kenya by a people called the Meru. There are several Merus throughout this earth. There are several Egypts and Morocco. This is in reference to another story. I didn't mean to put this in here, but the Tiamat breaking up from Tiamat or the other worlds, etc. Okay. Black is a derogatory term. That's not the word to use, but take it with a grain of salt. This is what some of the empire looked like, right? This is called Amaru Maru, or the Gate of the Gods. And what I'll go to in other videos is this Mercator's letter to John D, giving a detailed description of the area of so-called Meru, Mount Meru, near Greenland. And again, I say so-called, right? So that will conclude this video in regards to the meaning of Meru, why we chose the name, um, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody has any questions, comments, or anything, or they even wish to go into another topic, um, I yield the floor and you can have the floor.
No questions. Thank you.
Right on, right on, right on. Okay, so with that being said, I'll post this video on YouTube. And see you guys next time, man. Allah bless you all. Peace.
Gratitude.
For sure, for sure.